Welcome to What's Your Take? I'm Wyatt Spalding, and today we're going to talk about some college football. There were a lot of games on this past weekend, but the three games I'm going to talk about today, mostly, are the Ohio State-Oregon game, the Toledo-Notre Dame game, and the Arkansas-Texas game. So let's get started. My take on the Ohio State-Oregon game is I did not see this coming. Whoa. But I mean, maybe we all should have seen it coming. Ohio State didn't play as well as we thought they would against Minnesota. Even though they won, Minnesota still was in the game, was in it for most of the game. So, but you thought, oh, it's the first week. You know, they'll play more dominant against Oregon. Plus, Oregon almost lost to Fresno State. They only beat Fresno State by like a touchdown. But Oregon just came in and balled out and never let Ohio State tie the game up. Tie the game up and send it into overtime or even take the lead back. The Oregon quarterback, Anthony Brown, he threw for 236 yards and 2 touchdowns, completed 48% of his passes. Had a good day on that. But the real guy that carried the Oregon Ducks was running back C.J. Verdell. And he had 20 carries, 161 yards, 8 yards per carry. This guy was dominant, man. They just kept giving him the ball, and he was just plowing through Ohio State's defense. His longest run was like 77 yards. I mean, they just really took it to Ohio State. Malik Wright, the quarterback for Oregon, he had 10 tackles, led Oregon in the tackles, and just all around, it was a good game. You know, 35-28. So it was competitive, but you didn't think that Oregon could stick with Ohio State, really. Especially after the first week, they looked rusty, but they really showed the nation, and it really is a good win for the Pac-12 to show that they can compete with big teams like Ohio State and beat them. C.J. Stewart, quarterback for Ohio State, he threw 35 for 54, completed 35 of 54 of his passes, threw for 408 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. Then he had the interception at the end of the game, trying to drive down the field to tie the game up, and threw the interception. You know, the guy's only a freshman, and not everyone can be Justin Fields. I mean, it's only the second game of the season, so we got to see what this guy is really made of. Obviously, he's good because he starts at Ohio State, so he's going to be good, but you got to remember, he's only a freshman. So it's only his second college game ever that he's played in as a starter. Ohio State had a total of 612 yards to Oregon's 500 total yards. 612 yards on offense. 484 of those yards were passing, and only 128 rushing to Oregon's 269 rushing yards. Oregon had 500 yards passing of total offense. So Oregon just really, man, they surprised us all. And we're going to have to see what Ohio State is really made of. Can they bounce back and make a run for the playoffs still? I mean, I think they will. The only teams that I could maybe see beating Ohio State is Wisconsin, maybe. I mean, they struggle against Penn State in week 1. Maybe, well, Michigan's looking good right now, but it's only been 2 games. And maybe, like, it's finally the year that Jim Harbaugh and Michigan will beat Ohio State. But, honestly, Ohio State cannot lose 2 games. An SEC team like Alabama or Georgia, they could lose 2 games, depending on who they lose to, but probably lose to someone that's really good and still be in contention for the playoffs. I think if Ohio State loses one more game, they're not going to be in the playoffs. So we'll have to see what happens with that. And then again, this is a big win on Oregon's resume to maybe put them in the playoffs. I got the top 2 teams in the Pac-12 are not just because they won this game, but Oregon and UCLA. If I had to pick one right now, I'd go UCLA to win the Pac-12, but if someone's going to represent the Pac-12 in the playoffs, it's going to be one of those 2 teams, I believe. The other game, and this game should have been a blowout. I mean, this has been really bad if they would have lost, but Notre Dame clinches out a win against Toledo, 32-29. Jack Cohn, the quarterback for Notre Dame, went 21 for 33, threw for 239 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. His finger got dislocated. They popped it back in, and then he goes out and throws the game-winning touchdown. That's pretty clutch. Even though it was against Toledo, they still, had to win the game. One more play to win the game, and he came through. But Notre Dame has had 2 games, first 2 games of the season, barely won. Are they overhyped? Maybe. I mean, they should have killed Toledo. I mean, if you're Toledo, even though you lost, and moral victories, even if you lose, they still kind of suck, but you gotta look at it as, wow, we just took one of the most historic programs down to the wire and almost beat them. So obviously they'll do well in their conference in the MAC, and I think they're one of the teams to pick to win the MAC. But still, it's like Notre Dame should have won this game by like 2 or 3 touchdowns. So we'll just have to see, is this game a sign that Notre Dame is overhyped and they're really not as good as everyone thinks they are, or they just had a bad game and second game of the season, getting their feet wet, trying to get a rhythm going for the season. We'll have to see. Toledo had 0 passing touchdowns, by the way. Carter Bradley threw for 17 for 27, 213 yards, completed 63% of his passes, but no touchdowns. Excuse me. Brian Koback, the running back for Toledo, he had 122 yards rushing on 21 carries and scored a touchdown. They also scored a touchdown on defense. Cornerback Chris McDonald had an interception for 27 yards and a touchdown. Had a couple field goals in there. The field goal kicker went 3 for 3. So they really hung around. And like I said, kind of a moral victory for Toledo. Yeah, you lost. Could have one of the biggest upsets of the season, but still, you hung in there with one of the most historic programs in college football. The other game, Texas versus Arkansas. I watched this game, and Arkansas from the beginning just beat the crap out of Texas. Just pounding them on the ground. The Texas quarterbacks, yes, quarterbacks, not just one quarterback, could not get anything going. They started out with Hudson Card. He threw for 8 for 15 on just 61 yards, completed 53% of his passes. Then Casey Thompson came in and only went 5 for 8 for 57 yards, but he did have 44 yards rushing, scored 2 touchdowns rushing. So maybe there's going to be a quarterback battle between those two. We'll have to wait and see on that. But Texas, ranked number 15. They win their first game of the season. I think it was like Louisiana against Louisiana Tech or something like that. So you think they're looking, decently good, top 25 team, but coming in against Arkansas, who's been struggling for the past couple years, and Arkansas just pounded them on the ground. They literally ran Texas down. Their running back, Trellon Smith had 12 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. But wait, their quarterback, KJ Jefferson, had 10 carries for 73 yards on the ground. Running back A.J. Green had 7 carries for 67 yards, 1 touchdown. And running back Raheem Sanders had 8 carries for 50 for 50 yards and 1 touchdown. And also running back Dominique Johnson had 6 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it wasn't just one running back. Those were the top 5 guys on running back. And there were like 2 or 3 others they put in the game that had at least almost 30 yards on the ground. I mean, you got to give credit to the Arkansas offensive line for blocking for those 5 running backs and more. We're just pounding the ball against Texas. And if this works for Arkansas for the season, all the more power to them. Like, you have 5 running backs and your quarterback that can just run teams into the ground like this. Yeah, who knows what Arkansas could do this season. Arkansas had 333 yards total rushing as a team compared to Texas 138. Other games, USC lost to Stanford. That was kind of a shocker. I thought USC would have that one for sure, but they lost 28-42. Texas A&M Colorado, that game was really low scoring, 10-7. Texas A&M pulled it out, but had to come from behind. Played from behind most of the game. And then Michigan, they killed Washington 31-10. Michigan looked like, man, they were playing against a team in the MAC, or just a team that wasn't even in one of the Power 5 conferences. They just could do whatever they wanted to Washington. Or Washington several years ago was in the playoffs, or in contention for the playoffs, and now they're just kind of struggling. They lost their season opener to a no-name team, to an FCS team, and man, they just really got to get something going. But those are just some of the good games this week in college football. A lot more to come. Not the biggest week, because, you know, it's only week 2, but as the season goes on, I mean, there's going to be a lot more big games out there. So, yeah, watch for more big games as the season goes on. Will Arkansas put their stamp on the SEC and maybe finish 5th or 4th on their side of the conference? Will Texas rebound and find out who their quarterback is? And then Notre Dame, are they for real or not? Was that just a bad game? I guess we'll see. Lots of questions, not for just these teams, but for a lot of teams in college football. Is Michigan going to be really good this year and beat Ohio State? Is teams like Penn State and Wisconsin, is they're going to get their offense going? Just a lot of things that could happen this year, and I can't wait for it. So tune in on Mondays and Tuesdays for some college football. I'll have another show coming up on just the Nebraska game. So I'll do a show on college football games, games that are any game but Nebraska, because I'll do the Nebraska game separately, which will be coming out here soon. And then after Mondays, like Tuesdays or Wednesdays, I'll do like NFL and my thoughts on the week in the NFL. Thanks for watching. What's your take?